Hello everyone and welcome to some MiSTer FPGA news. This week, we will be talking about updates on the S-Video cores, what's going on with the New Zealand core, a brand new MSX1 core, the Sega Saturn core adding more control options, and more. So let's get to it. Mike Simone's S-Video cores are now part of Update All, but you will still need to enable them on Updates All unofficial cores menu. Before, you had to install these cores manually by downloading them and copying them to your MiSTer. So if there were any official updates to the core, you had to re-download the new updates that Mike would implement. This process could get tedious because if there were any new updates to a core, Mike had to rebuild his new core with those changes, and then you have to re-download the core manually again to your MiSTer. Having them available in Update All makes it much easier to use these cores. So what are these cores exactly? These are forked cores that have native support for S-Video. You will also need some cables to help you attach a TV with S-Video on it. I have a video explaining exactly how to set these cores up. Check the description for the link. Mike is also working on a dedicated adapter that you attach to your MiSTer that will complement these cores. Bob from Retro RGB and Zez Retro have a video testing these adapters. You can also check out the Retro RGB article talking about the adapters. And regarding those adapters, Ultimate MiSTer, a vendor of MiSTer products, is going to be selling these adapters in the near future. But if you have the skills to build your own, Mike has the schematics on GitHub. The design is not finished yet, so anything you build yourself now will not be final. For Robert Pipe's weekly PlayStation updates, he told us that he fixed a GPU soft reset bug on the PlayStation core. If you're a fan of Primal Rage, this solves a color palette bug in the game. Robert also posted a new article on Patreon regarding bug hunts. In this new article, the games he goes over for bug hunting are Castro Honda Superbike Racing and Primal Rage. The bugs that he will be going over involve colors being wrong and missing graphics. Visit his Patreon for the full details. Looks like the New Zealand story core is still having issues and needs more work. Right now there's a hang in the boot up process for the game that needs to be fixed. Jotego also worked on other bug fixes for games. For the Bubble Bobble core, he has some slowdowns fixed, and for Outrun, he's still working on the frame buffer, which will help with sprite issues. He released a new core for Outrun that's clocked at 50 MHz, but right now that core is exhibiting even more glitches. Visit Jotego's Patreon for even more info. Jimmy Stones created a mock-up of the overlay for the Jet Fighter arcade core. In the actual game, there were no clouds, but Atari used a color overlay to simulate the clouds in the cabinet. That color overlay is what Jimmy Stones mocked up. Without that overlay, the game would just be black and white. The overlay is not yet implemented in the core. Jimmy Stones just did a quick and dirty mock-up outputting a MiSTer capture to OBS and overlaying an image layer on top of the capture. This core is still in development and not yet released. A new MSX1 core was released and developed by Molecular. The MSX was a standardized home computer architecture, so like PCs, there was no one manufacturer of the computer. You had several companies developing these. This core is based on the Philips VG8020 MSX computer. The previous MSX1 core was a hybrid core that can also play MSX2 software. Along with being a core dedicated to just MSX1 hardware, this new core has the added benefit of loading floppy and cart images directly. It will not replace the previous core, as you can still use that core for MSX2 games. Features currently implemented in this core are 64 kilobytes of RAM in slot 3, the PSG sound chip was implemented, there's support for 2 cartridges, the core can automatically detect a cartridge mapper, there's also the option to manually select a mapper. There's joystick support, floppy disk support using DSK images. There's cassette support with analog or CAS emulation. You have PAL and NTSC options. And there's load BIOS for experiments. If you intend to use this core and you don't have an SD-RAM chip, there's good news because it works without one, but there are memory limitations. When there's no SD-RAM chip installed on your MiSTer, Slot 1 can only use floppy disk or Game Master 2 SRAM. For Slot 2, the maximum ROM image size is 256 kilobytes. When you do have a SD-RAM chip installed, Slot 1 and slot 2 can use ROM images of up to 4 megabytes. SRG 320 has updated some changes to the Saturn core. The changelog mentions merge pull request number 6 from Nolan Nicholson peripherals and SMPC joystick peripheral handling. This update doesn't affect game compatibility, but it does allow you to use an analog stick to play games that support analog controls. Some games with analog controls are Daytona, Afterburner, and Knights. Links to the test builds are available in the MiSTer FPGA forum post regarding the Saturn core. Remember, these test builds are not official. The developer of the core did not release these. People are just compiling the source code that the developer updates on his GitHub. Expect a lot of bugs in this core because it's still not yet ready for the public. After finishing work on the Xerion core, Anton Gale has moved on to working on a new Slapfight core. It's very early in development, and just diagnostic test screens have been shown. Right now, Sound RAM and Foreground RAM have passed diagnostic testing. Slapfight is a 1986 vertically scrolling shooter developed by Toaplin. It's set in a science fiction themed world, and its weapon power-up system is similar to that of Gradius. If this is a core that interests you, check out Anton Gale's Twitter to get core updates. In this segment, I want to highlight how awesome the MiSTer video filters are. While browsing Twitter, I came across this post by Retrofonts showing some filter settings that look really awesome. These filters do a great job of giving you that CRT look. There's a really good discussion regarding the filters if you head on over to that Twitter thread. And other miscellaneous MiSTer fixes and updates are, for the Phoenix Arcade core, the Phoenix and Mothership sounds have been slightly enhanced. On the VIC-20 core, the CPU was updated, the core was updated for better NTSC support, and the screen position was updated through VGA output. For the PCXT core, a workaround was implemented for an off-center border in the Area 5150 demo. Real-time clock support was added via port 240H. There was reworking of chip selection registers and optimizations of signals to avoid redundancy. Bits 3 and 4 were added to port mapping in Tandy 1000 mode, and some optimizations were reverted due to incompatibility with the Juco ST BIOS. That's it for other updates. Please also try to support Sorge, the maintainer of the MiSTer project, and other MiSTer developers and contributors on support platforms such as Patreon and Ko-fi. Their hard work allows us to enjoy this amazing project. So that's it for this episode. I provided links to all my sources in the description. Make sure you also check out RetroRGB.com to see my MiSTer news videos in blog form and to get more retro-related content. And if possible, support them on Patreon too. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like, and if you want to see more content like this, hit the subscribe button and its bell icon so you can get notified of future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll speak to you next time.